I mean, this is kind of cliche, because I say it all the time. But nature is the architect when we're dealing with trees. You know, it's like you could draw a house, and you can put it anywhere you want on the ground. But tree houses, we found, is like you got to live with them. You know, you got to get up in the trees, you got to get your platform going, and then you're like, oh, I never even thought of that. Like, I didn't even know the light was, you know, peeking through, you know, this area of this canopy at this hour, and that's where I want to have my shower, you know, and it's like, and this is where I want to like dine, and this is where I want to, you know, it evolves, you know. So the thing is like, someone asked like, have you ever designed without actually visiting the site? I refuse to do that. Like, there's no way, because I don't want to get stuck. You know, it's like, I gotta see your site. I gotta live there a little bit. I gotta hang out, and I at least gotta hang out at like 20 feet and go, oh yeah, you know, because I don't want to make a mistake.
That's a good segue into the survey part. So how about we cover the survey, and then we open up if there's some questions specific about, you know, I've got 5 trees or something, or more questions. But how about that? You want to talk about how I would survey something? Would that be a good use of your precious time? Okay. So as you were just saying, you know, you found your spot. You want to understand as much as you possibly can about it. I don't really bring a ladder with me to most of these places. You know, might be able to scramble up in the tree sometimes, but let's say you've got your ideal spot, and here's the good news: it's there, and it's not as scary as it sounds for those of you that don't have your place picked out. And Kevin and I had a great time now twice in the woods of Ohio, looking over. Gosh, it was like, how many acres is it?
75.
75 acres, you know. I mean, we were on ATVs at one point, and it was snow blowing around in October the first time I was there.
I'd say that's one of the highlights of doing the survey.
Doing the survey, right. Yeah. So it can be a little bit overwhelming with 75 acres, but, you know, you make your way through it, and ta-da, the treehouse location is going to reveal itself. And, you know, it's either the trees themselves that are, you know, screaming treehouse, or you know, all the other issues we talked about that are making it, you know, obvious that this is where, you know, at least the general area, and then bam, the trees appear, you're set, you know you're going to build in those. So now, what do? And a survey is, I pulled this out because this is what I use. I don't have a big suitcase full of equipment. I have a 25-foot tape and this and a pencil. And what I'll do is, knowing that I'm going to come back with the information that I put in here to a desk somewhere with some graph paper, I've brought some. You know, this is basically the size paper that I used, 11 by 17 graph, you know, bond paper, and then some tracing paper. So this will be at home waiting for me. But while you're in the field, all you do is, and it doesn't have to be this small of a pad by any means. So, you know, I'm gonna, let's say it is those 3 trees, and just for simplicity, or let's make it more.
And you'll set your direction.
Right. And I would go with the south, not the north arrow. All right. So that's basically where. Let's imagine we've got these 5 trees. This is where I'm going to start, and I'm going to put that in my book just like that. I'll label tree number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And all I'm going to do is, now maybe another part that might be worrisome but isn't, is find your floor height. You know, you're gonna determine right then and there that, you know, you're either going to be 12 feet off the ground, or I don't know what we ended up with, Kevin, at your place, 18 or something. I think. Right. You know, so we're up in the, you know, we're seeing where we are right at that time. You're going to measure between the trees, and I'll go ahead and make boxes like this between the trees, because I will invariably forget one of these measurements, because you're going to do between the trees, but then you're going to go, and this measurement is going to be from bark to bark. Inside to inside.
you do those measurements at the 20-foot level or whatever?
I don't, and I don't really have to, because your eye is actually pretty good at checking out plumb. So if you do have a tree like this, let's say we were going to put the floor up at where the roof is right here, and you're down on the ground, you know, you'd be surprised at how
So you're not trying to be super accurate, just within inches.
within inches. And then the other thing is, okay, so you want your diameter as well. So you're getting an idea, and I have to admit that I'm getting a little flippant with my dimensions. You know, I'm kind of going, I'd look at that tree and say, well, that's 12 and a half. Nah, 14, I don't. And I'll just put down that. So I'm not being too anal. You know, and when I first started doing this, I thought I had to, you know, get some computer program or some special machine that would do all this and model everything perfectly. You don't need to. You really don't need to. So tree one, I'd say, okay, that's 14 inches, and you don't really. I would say you want to get a tape on it and be fairly accurate. And then you're going to measure between, and you're going to put, you know, 7 feet 6 inches, and you go around 9 feet 4 inches, and you fill all of this in, and then you've captured all the information that you need right there, so that when you go back to the desk, you can put this on graph paper in real scale, and that is simple. And what I basically do is I might take a tree like between 1 and 4, and let's say that's 20 feet 6 inches apart. Imagine that this is on my graph paper, and this is one of the heavy lines of my graph paper. You know, we've got those grids going like so. So I'm just simply going to get those tree 1 and 4, 14-inch tree and a 12-inch tree, and I'm going to take my half-inch scale, and I'm going to measure between these two trees 20 feet 6 inches, and I use a little template thing, you know, with all the circles, and I cheat a little bit with that, and I say, oh, there's 14 inches there, and I just keep that scale, measure across 20 feet, there's that. Okay, well, I know this tree is, so if I'm going to find tree number 5, I've got my measurements from these trees, so I'll take that same scale, and I'll find, let's call this just 10 foot 6 inches. I'll go from the edge of what I've drawn on my graph paper over here somewhere, and I'll just swing an arc that's constant, you know, consistent 10 foot 6 from this. And if I look over here and see, I'm just filling this in. If I see over here from tree number 4, 5, I've got 12 foot 6. Then I'm going to swing an arc over there, 12 foot 6, and where this 16-inch tree, as I make up my numbers and go along here, where I can bring that little 16-inch round template in to kiss these lines, that's where tree 5 is. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny though, because like it seems really easy, but you're like measuring trees, you know, and the relationship between the trees, and it's something that, whatever, I'm, you know, I don't know what I call her, my ex-wife now. She did all my AutoCAD, you know, for 20 years, okay, and it was like it drove her crazy, because I'm like, well, I think it was like 16.5, you know, to here, and then it was like, you know, 1260 here, and then like she's like, well, what do you mean you think? It's like, you're measuring organic matter, you know, and you're like trying to go from the center of a tree to the center of a tree to the center of a tree.
But you're not
You're
going
talking
to the
about
center of the
architecture,
tree.
you know, like
You're going from part to part. This makes it more simple. And I'm
Yeah.
not trying to argue with you.
No.
I'm just trying to say that you can actually do this, and it makes life a whole lot simpler when you know, because then you can order your, when you finally boil the sauce down, you can see what your platform looks like, and you can actually measure the lengths of your beams,
Yeah.
you know, size them and so forth. So it's a really important step that's
super important.
and it's simple.
And the more you do triangulation on it, like Pete was doing, you don't just go, oh, I got it A, B, C, D, E. You know, it's like you have to go from here to here. You have to get that measurement. You have to get this measurement. Yeah.
That's why I do
You know,
boxes.
you have to do this because that gives you your geometry. Okay? And if you connect every tree to the other tree, that makes the numbers really tight.
But they don't always dial in. I mean, you could find yourself too. Don't panic if you're doing this and you end up with tree number 3. You know, you have an arc here, you'll have an arc here. Well, you find it doesn't just precisely lock in, and you know, it's not the end of the world.
And just
Okay,
order
yeah.
order extra lumber.
Order
That's
extra
what I
lumber.
do.
Good idea. Extra lights. That's why we've got
And then
the
sell it to
monster.
somebody else. Okay.
So if that makes sense, then we're good. I just wanted to. I think that's a critical thing. If you guys are all going to go back and plan your treehouse, this is basically step 2. Yes.
Do you have any way to try to figure out how much I guess what I'm thinking is if you're putting limbs on the outside on one tree and on the inside on another tree, is there any way to try to calculate how much this thing's going to move and maybe create a problem by doing that?
That's a huge question and a great question. I think that these trees, despite the fact that they're moving, they're not moving as much as they appear to be moving. I mean, it's different for me to say, here, let's look at this level. Let's say that's probably 17, 18 feet off the ground. I don't know, something like that. In a heavy, heavy wind, how much is that really moving? And there's your question. I'm guessing. I'm always guessing, and I would not. These uplift arresters. Here's a standard, maybe early uplift arrestor, and what you're kind of driving at is, say I'm that tree, and well, that's a single tree, so everything's moving as one. But if you had another tree moving the opposite direction, how much throat do you need before you're hitting this? And we did a project in 5 or 6 years ago that was doing this all the time and broke the back of the tab, just sheared it right off. So you do want this to be the right length. Well, once this gets stretched past, say, 12, 14 inches, is it still helping you on the uplift? I don't know. I mean, so it's a great question. If it gets to be where you're not sure and this thing might really be rocking, then I might go up higher and then hang that beam, maybe with a cable or chain, so that can really move.
Yeah. And always use those kind of, using an arrestor bracket and then a backup. I mean, we haven't done anything in 10 years that didn't have a backup. So just in case
Higher up
this
in the
thing
tree or
got
lower
crazy,
down.
there's always a backup cable that goes into a huge leg board anchored in if that thing was to collapse.
I'm just curious in the group, because how you're doing this is how many people are building tree houses for people, and how many people are coming because they want to build a home tree. I mean, I'm just curious in the group, who's actively out there.
That's who's building for others. Cool. Wow. Who's building for themselves? A third and 2/3, and some who's just thinking about it and not really. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a hook, but
Really? Really?
man,
It's after.
That was perfect timing.
Well, did I get my?
people are talking about